Veniccio Institute of Music and Arts is one of the fastest growing music schools in the Philippines, offering music lessons worldwide with highly qualified teachers at the comfort of your own home. Marco Balbin is the founder and head teacher of Veniccio Institute. So, hello Marco. Welcome to Startup Podcast. We're very happy to have you here to share about Veniccio and about music.
Hi, Johnny. It's really nice to finally meet you, and I'm so grateful to be part of this startup podcast, which I heard is actually really growing when it comes to the audience.
Yeah, thank you. Siyempre, Veniccio is also very growing fast. So, yeah, I'm very excited to have this conversation. So, let's start with ano ang Veniccio Institute?
Okay, Veniccio Institute, as what you've mentioned earlier, is a music and art school. So we're offering instrumental lessons such as piano, violin, guitar, viola, cello, also drums, and also we also teach voice. And few months ago, we're actually just Veniccio School of Music. But last month, we started offering arts as well, which we actually had our first student already. We're offering arts in 3 different mediums, which is sketching, the first one, and charcoal and acrylic painting.
That's interesting. Pag-usapan natin later, especially yung growth and yung transitioning from music into arts. But I'm also interested sa music school. I mean, music education since you started here. So I'm curious lang muna, ano ba ang difference na music education sa education ng ibang subject like maybe science or math? Like what really makes music education different kaya?
Okay. So when it comes to education, let's say science, math, I see them as somehow a straightforward kind of thing. When it comes to music, music is a form of art.
Yeah.
And the main difference that I see is that music is open for interpretation, and you can actually put your actual input to the piece. So another thing is that it can also be a mode of expression.
Yeah.
So mainly, I think I see it as an art, which makes it different than other educational subjects.
Yeah, that's interesting nga kasi maybe yung student nga, kumbaga na-express din niya yung kanyang personality given yung tools ng music, given yung instruments. But now, let's talk about naman kasi Veniccio is an online music school now. I think it's because of the pandemic. So, paano ba nag-work ang music education, ang music teaching since hindi physical yung classes or yung interactions? So, ano yung difference kaya ng online sa offline?
Okay. I would be lying if I say that online lessons are actually way better than physical, because it's not gonna be like that. Before Benicio started, I actually had the chance to teach as a piano teacher as well, in person, not online. So I know that it would be difficult for an online setting to actually beat the physical ones, and it's not the goal. So when it comes to online setting, first we ask the parents or the client when they inquire to us, so which is more comfortable for them. What we do sometimes, there are countries which are more inclined in using Google Meet than Zoom. So it's one of the things that we ask. Then we actually trained our teachers and ourselves as well to actually adapt to what they need and to what is more convenient to them. Let's say, yeah, in Singapore, I think most of them are using Google Meet. In Philippines, yeah, Zoom is very famous here. Even the classes in schools and universities are using Zoom. And yeah, I think that's it. But the thing is, we are actually equipped in trying to adapt to what is convenient to them.
Pero I'm curious lang, like, paano actually nangyayari yung teaching? Kasi, I mean, can you maybe just give a few picture, a bit of picture? Like, kasi magkahiwalay yung instrument, kumbaga may piano yung teacher dito, may piano yung student doon. So, like, paano ba kaya para nag-work yung online teaching ng music?
Okay, so, I'm gonna give you a picture of what is happening during the music lessons. Okay, so once the student comes in the first lesson, we take a look of the instrument of the student. So once we see the instrument of the student, we already know the range, how high it can go and how low it can go. So by that, we use that in our knowledge to give the materials in PDF format usually, or in video format. for them to print for the previous sessions. And one good thing that we do in order to not waste the money that the client paid is the first session is always going to be free, because it will be the time where we will troubleshoot a lot of things like the audio. If I'm not hearing the student, I will already know it in our first sessions. If the student's piano or instrument is out of tune, then we will check it and we will try to help the client. If it's a guitar, usually we just help them tune it, or a violin, because it's something that the student itself must learn. But when it comes to the piano, we try to refer a tuner, because it's going to be hard if they will try to tune them themselves. So that's the thing that we do. That's for the first session. Pero pag sa second session na and onwards, since na-troubleshoot na namin lahat, it's gonna be smooth flowing na unless we change equipment or something, but it usually doesn't happen because in the first meeting, we already show the student what equipment we use. Especially like this. When I teach my piano lessons, usually I use two cameras. One that is above the keyboard, so the student can see the keyboard as well.
Yes.
And we just transition to different scenes using OBS.
Yeah.
So just in the first session, the student would already know what to expect and how the lessons would go.
Okay, interesting. So somehow nagagawa niyong parang medyo may pag-physical pa rin somehow. Kasi nakikita nga ng student yung instrument with you playing it from different angles. And you mentioned earlier na meron nga kayong students from Singapore or from other countries. So ang question ko din is, since online nga yung music school nyo sa ngayon, was this intentional ba na nagkaroon kayo ng foreign customers, or dahil lang ba talaga sa pandemic kaya kayo kumuha ng students abroad?
Okay, to be quite honest with you, that wasn't intentional. When I first started this music school, the market in mind was, of course, Filipino clients, because as you know, Yamaha, Lyric, those big names when it comes to music schools actually closed down for quite a while since the pandemic started. They still sell their instruments, they still have their places, locations, but they stopped with the lessons, and they also transitioned online. But one thing, because I think we're younger, so we're more inclined in technology. So we actually launched online lessons first before they did. So our market in mind is to actually those students who stopped learning because of the pandemic to learn from us as well. But what happened is, I think many of the OFWs enrolled in our school. Then here's the thing, I actually had the chance to talk to one parent from also another country in Asia, and I told him, I asked her, so why enroll with us, and kung may nag-refer ba. Then she told me that I think she just found it more affordable than the music schools in their country, which is, by the way, offering online music lessons as well. So that's the thing, because it kind of went into our favor, because it's only not the Philippines who went into lockdown, it's also other countries as well. So many of those clients are also looking for music schools, but they found Philippines as the most affordable ones, which is a good thing, I think, of course.
Interesting story and interesting move, kumbaga, na ginawa ng Veniccio. And I'm seeing the recitals, so parang merong mga online recitals, parang online performances yung students to showcase ano yung mga natutunan nila. I think that's also an interesting way to engage them. Pero can we ask, so kung maging maayos na yung state ng Philippines, like mawala, hopefully, or maybe yung pandemic, so will you go ba sa offline schools?
Yes, of course. I think sa mga nagsimulang businesses online, I think it's always going to be the plan. So what we're trying to do now is to actually make traction so that the people would know us already. So by the time we launch our public, let's say not public, but physical studio someday, they will already be knowing what Veniccio is. And because I know it's going to be hard, because when the pandemic or the lockdown ends, schools, those big names, those big corporations who are offering music schools are gonna reopen again. So it's gonna be a very hard battle. So as much as possible, while it is still in lockdown, we're taking advantage of this situation in order to get engagement much more.
Or maybe you're gonna go hybrid kasi I'm thinking sa Philippines, meron pa rin namang advantage kung you offer online music education. I think, I'm not sure kasi traffic, andyan pa rin yung problema ng traffic at saka provinces. I mean, posible pa rin naman na hindi makapunta like sa Metro Manila or someplace. So maybe mayroon pa rin value somehow ang online music school. What do you think about that?
Yes, tama ka dun. Actually, I don't see this online learning ending simply because there's a lot of advantage as well over the other. Even though physical music schools, you'll be more hands-on to the student. For the business owner or for the teachers as well, online music schools are also beneficial. So what I'm planning someday is, of course, aside from the physical music studio, there's still gonna be online music lessons with different set of teachers.
Okay. Okay, so speaking of that, pag-usapan naman natin ngayon yung mga teachers ng Veniccio. So I've visited the website and I saw the current lineup of the teachers. I think they're great. So maybe can you just introduce them muna? So sino ba yung mga ilang teachers and are you finding more teachers to teach at Veniccio?
Okay, so as I've mentioned before ako nag-start na this music school, I was lucky enough to be able to teach, at least matry yung personal in-person teaching. And one of the persons that one of my colleagues there is actually my teacher now in Veniccio. So she is my teacher here in Veniccio, and to be quite honest, among my teachers which is I think 10 to 12 right now, majority of those teachers are people that I haven't met personally before the lockdown. So nakilala ko lang sila nung nag-lockdown. And most of those people are simply referrals from the person that I worked with before. So refer until we build this community of teachers na marami na rin kami ngayon.
Yeah, but I think that's amazing kasi like even with the lockdown, somehow you can provide jobs or opportunities. Kumbaga merong natutuloy pa rin nila yung passion nila and somehow meron silang source of income. I think that's great. So punta naman tayo sa stories behind Veniccio Institute. So paano ba 'to nagsimula? Maybe yun yung background. So you've said that you've taught music offline. Pero I mean, are you really like a music performer before or maybe share some of your background?
Okay, sige. Actually, before I started the school, the reason why I started this school is because when the pandemic started, my graduation was postponed.
Okay.
Because I was meant to graduate, it's I think 2020 or 2019, later part of 2019. But when the lockdown happened, a lot of the events were canceled. Because I was learning before I was enrolled at UST. I'm learning Bachelor's of Music and Piano Performance, and before I graduate, I have to have my recitals. One is junior recital and graduation recital. So junior recital was the one that was postponed. So it's like our thesis. So we don't have thesis in our course, but we do have solo recitals. But since the pandemic started, how could we, right? Kasi first, walang audience, and also walang UST, so walang venue.
Yeah.
So it was really devastating on my part. And of course, when you're that, I mean, during that year, in your senior years in school, you're actually excited to graduate because in your mindset, it would open up a lot of opportunities, right? For you, you would have a job, you would apply to a lot of things, and you would see where life would take you. But all of a sudden, dahil nga nag-lockdown, nung March, then it was canceled. Then we couldn't do it online because nung panahon na yon, they only see it as something that's temporary. So they told us, oh, we can't do this online because you're a performer. You should be doing this actual live. But things went longer and longer until nag-decide na sila to have it online. So during that period when they still haven't decided to conduct recitals online, and when my recital was postponed, that was when the idea came upon me to start an online music school. But it started because actually someone from another school asked me if I could teach for them. But the thing is, a lot of music schools already have emerged during that time. I think there's already 3 or 4. So I saw it as a chance to why not open my own and try to up myself when it comes to marketing and everything, and let's see how it goes. Instead of teaching for them, why not start for myself, since a lot of music schools have already been emerging during that time.
Yeah, that's an interesting personal story na like yung parang yung devastation nga, yung merong naipon na passion eh. So somehow that led you to founding Veniccio and your own music school. Pero I'm curious lang. So in the future ba, would you still follow a direction na parang you're gonna be a music performer? Like you're gonna be an artist, a performer, more than just having this music school? I mean, that's a personal question.
Yeah, it's fine. Actually, in our school, when you enroll in a conservatory, you would be asking to decide whether you want to be a performance major or a music education major. So a music education major, they're more focused on classroom teaching. So when you see those high school teachers teaching MAPE, music arts, those are graduates of music education major. When it comes to piano performance, even though our course says performance, we're actually being trained aside to perform. Since we actually have a further skill level much more than the music education, because we are trained to perform. But aside from that, we are also trained to teach one-on-one. So when somebody asks what's the difference between the two, it's just to keep things simple. Music education is for classroom setting, and performance is for one-on-one. And I think, to answer your question, of course, I'd be willing as well to still continue performing if time permits. But as you can see, the reason why I studied performance, aside from performing, is to actually learn how to teach advanced students one-on-one. So that's what I use. So when I learn something, a difficult piece, let's say, I could give interpretation much better, since my skill level in piano is much higher than those who teach in music education. But of course, it's not really always the case. There are also music education majors who teaches in classroom but are really good in their instruments. It's just that their passion is towards classroom. So the thing is, if time permits, and I think I would still lean towards the school, simply because when it comes here in the Philippines, or in any other countries, I think teaching has a larger opportunities than performer, because we already know it. Many here are, especially in the Philippines, maraming gustong sumikat na singers like that, performers, and di ba? And when you say Filipinos, oh, they're good in singers, but still only the few gets the spotlight, di ba? So I think yun talaga yung point. Performance would come if it comes, but when opportunity arrives, so kung nasa teaching yung opportunity, then we'll grab it as well.
Yeah, pero I get the point. Ang interesting nun. So like in the pedagogy of music education, parang meron yung technical side, like yung classroom setting and yung maybe yung instrument, like the parts of it and like how it works. And then meron din yung parang artistic expression talaga, yung parang interpretation and like expression of your passion in music, in arts, in what you're doing. And then parang when you're a performer, I think maybe sama mas malaki nga yung experience mo dito. And maybe yun nga sa Pilipinas, parang yun din yung hanap ng karamihan, yung like, yung mga birot, di ba? Yung mga talagang ganong klaseng, I'm not sure, pero I think yung mga ganong klaseng style of singing, of music. Pero, so that's how Veniccio started. So let's go naman yung growth nito. And by the way, kailan pala ba nag-start si Veniccio? And maybe share some of yung growth ng community ni Veniccio, like numbers maybe, gano'n na ba kalawak or karami, or ano na ba yung growth ni Veniccio ngayon?
Okay, sige. We started during the pandemic, like what I've said. So we're already in our first year and a half right now. For the numbers, we right now, during this time, we have at least 60 active students.
Wow.
But overall, since last year, we've accumulated at least already 800, around from 1 year, when the pandemic started until today. So we accumulated a total number of 800 students. And our countries that we service already reached 20, which is very nice.
Yeah, very nice.
Like what I've said, majority of our students usually nasa ibang bansa na. And for our future plans naman. Sorry, you asked about the achievements, right? Or milestones that we reached. Yes, since a few months ago, we already launched our art lessons. Last month, we already got our first student. And the thing is, it's funny because our first student is in Singapore pa. Wala pa kaming student ng art here in the Philippines. Our first student is in Singapore, and that student is also our student in voice.
Okay. Pero question pala, so paano pala kayo naghahanap ng art teacher? Paano niya nahanap yung art teacher na yun?
Okay, so it just so happened that I'm an art collector. Okay. So I was just visiting exhibits. I like visiting exhibits, galleries in malls or kung saan man. And someone messaged me na nagpakilala siya. Okay. Then first he told me na kung pwede daw ba ako pumunta sa exhibit niya, ganyan-ganyan. Then afterwards, nung medyo nagiging kakwentuhan ko na siya, tinanong niya kung pwede siya magturo ng art. So, for me naman, why not, di ba? Since music and arts are somehow related naman. Then I took the opportunity and hired him as our art teacher for our school. And so far, doing great naman.
And for the future naman, so are you trying to get more music teachers, more arts teachers, or ano ba yung future plans niyo for Veniccio?
Okay, future plans, aside from what we talked earlier about opening a physical studio, I'm also planning to get more teachers in woodwinds because we've been receiving inquiries about woodwinds instrument, clarinet, oboe, flute, and wondering if we have teachers. Right now, we don't have just yet. So for next year, we want to launch woodwind family instruments. So we're looking for woodwind teachers right now. And also, we're planning to add more teachers in piano and voice because of course here in the Philippines, many people like piano. When it's summertime especially, the parent would enroll their kid in the piano and also voice. Kasi sa lahat ng ino-offer naming services, those two yun yung pinakamarami. And minsan, hindi na rin kaya ng schedules namin since puno na. But so far, buti, kinakaya pa naman. But there are times na, may nag-inquire tapos yung available time niya is hindi kasama sa available sa amin ngayon. So naghahanap agad kami ng teachers na magtuturo. So minsan, the teacher is hindi ko pa nakakausap, pero nakausap na nung admin ko because I have an admin who talks to the teachers. So first day, kakausapin niya, then the next day magtuturo na. Di tsaka ako palang makakausap. The thing about here kasi, just to add lang sa mga tanong ko kanina, the thing about here in the Philippines is yung teachers are independent contractors. So somehow, yung mga teachers mo dito, makikita mo rin sa ibang schools. So it's just a matter of sino yung makakapagbigay sa kanila ng maraming students. Kung iisipin mo, it may seem a problem kasi yung presyo lang yung magkakaiba, di ba? But I think it's the best choice we have right now kasi arts, music, they're really not that well compensated here in the country. Kumpara mo sa ibang courses and ibang professions, right? And I think that is one of the good things. That is one of the good sides of the online lesson somehow. Kasi when it comes to pedagogy or music education, we focus on three things, like a triangle: the parent, the student, and kaming mga teachers. So I think sa online lessons, it benefits us three. Kasi yung nag-handle ng music school, which is us, yung Veniccio, we only have very little operational expenses, di ba? So as for that, yung rates namin are not as mas mahal sa mga big music schools na. And I think just to add sa kanina nating napag-usapan, yun yung isa sa mga advantage why mabilis kami nag-grow. Kasi those corporations who own a music school, when the pandemic struck, they're still paying their rents in the malls or kung saan man. So they couldn't lower down their fees. So kami mga nasa bahay lang, we took it as an advantage. So yung mga prices namin is competitive enough. So mababayaran din namin yung teachers namin ng much higher salary than those schools.
Yeah, okay. Ang galing na pag-explain mo, I mean about overall, about everything, and parang doon din lumalabas yung parang advantage nga ni Veniccio as a music school. So before we end this conversation, let's talk a bit about music and about, I think, classical music kasi yun yung parang parang leaning talaga ni Veniccio. So, this is a bit personal question. So, for you, Marco, so why do you really like classical music? And maybe can you share like, sino ba yung mga favorite classical musicians mo? Or just, can you just share with us really your love or your passion? And make us feel the joy in classical music. Parang ganun.
Okay, sige. Like what I've said earlier, music is a form of art nga, and it's open for interpretation. And that's what I love about music the most. Just to clear a misconception about classical music. Usually, classical music, pagdating sa Philippines, or in general term, classical music, pag sinabi natin classical music, it's just the classical era supposedly. But yung common knowledge ng tao is classical music is a lot of eras actually, which is Baroque era, classical era, and romantic era, and much more. When I say Baroque era, ito yung mga usually church music, if you're familiar with Bach, ganyan. And classical era, it's more of sila Mozart, Beethoven. Then romantic is sila Franz Liszt, si Frédéric Chopin. So tatlo sila, three different eras, three different things, three different forms, but parang sa taas nila, it's called the classical music. So if you ask me what I like classical music, I'll be answering the above term as the umbrella of everything. So I like classical music because it can be complex, but at the same time, it can be simple. So it might be confusing, but let's say I'm gonna put to mention pop music right now.
Yeah.
Usually the pop music right now has verse, chorus, refrain, like verse. So we call it as form. So that's the form of the classical music that is prevalent today. So you might see the form is very simple. But in the classical music, we also have forms. We have ABA. So the A is you just repeat the A in the beginning. But the complexity that you can hear and you can see in those letters, in those forms, are much more complex than what we see in the pop music today. So I think that's what is fascinating for me in the classical music. And I do greatly appreciate that personally.
Okay, I like this lesson na. A question lang, itong mga ganitong like music theory lesson, meron din ba to, I mean, share nyo din ba sa mga students ninyo? I think it's amazing, I mean, for me to hear.
Yes, especially when I said earlier, meron tayong Baroque era classical, we also teach the students how to interpret those eras in their instruments. So in Baroque, hindi pa dapat ganito, hindi pa dapat ganyan, dapat bitawan mo agad somehow. We also say that to those students, and bakit ganon, kailan na-develop yung form na to. So we also teach them, but we're also gonna be offering next year music theory naman. So instead of instrumental lessons, we're gonna offer music series. So it's for music analysis, forms analysis, which is hindi ko alam if it would be successful, but so far may dalawa namang nag-inquire. So I think merong market dito sa Philippines.
Yeah, kasi music theory and music is not just like something that you hear. It has a more like really role nga in the society. Parang meron siyang value somehow in aesthetics, in art. Yeah, I really love this conversation, Marco. Thank you very much also for sharing with me about music. Kasi ako personally, I mean, I'm not that proficient and I'm not that knowledgeable in music. So yeah, thank you for this conversation. So maybe can you just take this time to invite maybe our listeners, so if they want to enroll maybe in Veniccio, if they want to study music online, or if they want to know more about you or connect with you, so how can they do so? Where can they find you?
Okay, so even if it's Christmas and we're on a break, we're still accepting students. Although I think since the break will actually come anytime soon, the lessons will already start this coming January in 2022. So we offer a lot of instruments like I've mentioned earlier. If you want to reach us out, you can book a free trial in our website at venicioschool.com, or you can message us directly on our Instagram and Facebook account. Our school name is Veniccio Institute of Music and Arts. We also teach arts and music.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a very this is a very artistic and wonderful episode. Yeah, I love this and I learned a lot. So thank you very much, Marco.
Salamat din. It's so nice to meet you again. So grateful to be here.
Maraming salamat.